Alright everyone, today we want to test the REPT 150 cell. If you've watched some of our previous videos, you might have seen a bit of a preview of this cell, and we're going to be looking at this cell in a little more in depth today. We're going to be doing a capacity test on the cell. We're also going to be doing a high and low load on the cell, and then we're going to be looking at the overall dimensions and the size of the cell and why we find this cell to be quite appealing, especially to our enclosure. So just sit back and relax. It's going to be a decent sized video, about 15 minutes or so, but I think this is going to be quite helpful, and let's see what we learn about the cell and what we plan on offering using the REPT 150. Thanks.
Alright, now it's time for everyone's favorite test, time for the cell punishment test, or high load test as we like to call it. So let's just go over our setup. We have our lugs attached, and they are secured via the nylon lock nuts. Cell was charged last night, still holding about 3.4 or so volts. REPT 150 made around June of this year, and we're reading a nominal voltage of around 3.395, and as you can see, the sense, that little thing right there lets you know that the remote sense is active. So we'll start off with some basic tests. We'll start off with a 50 amp test. Okay, and at 50 amps we are holding about 3.45 volts. It's doing pretty good. Yep, so that seems to be, you know, decent. All right, I'm going to jump straight to 100 amps. So 100 amp load, and it is producing around 328 watts, and we're holding around 3.27. Okay, so already we can sort of see differences between the 150 and like the 300. Normally in most 280s to 300s, we would still be in the 3.3 volt range. So smaller cell, not able to put out as much power, so that is to be expected, but still it's within, you know, reasonable range. Okay, so now we're going to go up to a full 1C. Okay, 150 amps. This is a 150 amp hour cell, and we're going to be pushing 150 amps out of it. So this is a full 1C. First time that we're actually going to be able to hit a cell at 1C on our electronic load and not push it. So let's see if we can maintain at least, we're hoping at least 3.15 or so, but we're going to find out. Okay, so we're actually pushing 150 amps, 482 watts, and we're holding 3.2, but just barely. It's probably going to dip below 3.2, but hey, that's not bad. 150 amps is quite a lot from a single cell. So yeah, we're still able to do that. So, and it's going to come down obviously. So let's sort of see how the bounce back up. All right, so it takes a little while to bounce back up. As you can see, it's slowly getting back to 3.3, and it's eventually going to work its way back up to about 3.3 volts. So I would say that's probably the most you'd want to push it. I don't recommend people going over 150 amps on this particular cell. But let's just see what happens if we do, you know, push it a little harder. So we're going to go to 175 amps off of a single cell. All right, and let's sort of see let's let the voltage stabilize a bit. Test the cell. Yeah, it's not warm or anything. Temp probes are still looking good. By the way, it's using dual 6-gauge silicone wire, so it should be good for up to 200 amps or maybe a little more for our temporary little test. So, all right, so we seem to have settled at 3.311 volts and 175 amps. Let's go. All right, so we're probably going to definitely dip below the 3.2s, and let's sort of see where it has. Now, this is sort of like the, I guess, the grunt portion of the cell. Like when this in the 3.15, 3.2, that's really where the core of the cell is, and we want to sort of see what we can do with it. So it is holding, it is dipping, but you know, still not too bad. Now, in comparison to like the through 280s or the 304, which is probably the strongest cell we've ever tested, we would still be in the above 3.25 range. So 555 watts, 175 amp continuous, and cells holding 3.172. Okay. All right. Now let's start getting into some serious numbers. So as you can see, the jump back is a little lower, so it's not going to jump back up to 3.3 as quickly as a load. So that's usually an indication that we don't really want to push the cell harder. It's having a harder time getting back to nominal voltage around 3.33. So we'll let it sort of bounce back up a little bit, but that's clearly, it's clearly beyond what the cell normally would like. But let's just keep going. So we're going to go to 200 amps. All right, 200 amps, and we are probably firmly in the 3.15 to 3.1, 15 or so range, pushing 633 watts, and yeah, that's definitely up there. I don't really recommend going more than 200 amps on this cell. We're still going to go to 240, but this is probably the most that you should sort of expect to do on a cell, the REPT 150. But anyway, I'm going to stop that, and now we're going to max out our load at 240 amps. And that's just the limitation of our device. You should not be pushing 240 amps on these cells. They will do it, but you will probably hurt them. So this is just, we're doing it for the sake of doing it. Do not do this on your cell. That's a lot of power. It's well over 1C. You're probably approaching, 1.6, 1.7C. So that's really a lot. You should only do it for like a few seconds. But anyway, we'll enter it and let's see what we can. And yeah, 3.15 under load. So that's a pretty heavy load, and we're drawing 650 watts. So it basically is doing the same thing that are the big cells that are twice the size able to do it, but that's really hurting the cell. It's normally if we were testing like a grade B 280 or grade B 304, we'd say, yeah, that's a grade B 304. But this is 150 and probably should stick to 150 amps or less, 1C. So yeah, we're in 3.12. So yeah, that's definitely too much. So we'll stop it. But it did pull it. It pulled the watts like a champ. So not too bad. REPT 150, very nice form factor, as we have shown earlier. It's almost half the size of a typical cell, and it works great for our enclosure. So there is your high load test. All right, time for the capacity test, which everyone seems to love. And we're going to use a tool that's very common, good old ZKE40. ZK40. We've got that same cell that we had looked at earlier, and we'll do a load test later. So let's go over the settings. We will be doing 30 amps at 2.5. Now the cool thing about this comes out to exactly 0.2C. So very good. Now, as we have stated, our reasons for staying at 30 amp is because it's 10 gauge wire. And again, we did not use the alligator clips. We are using lugs that have been secured via nylon lock nuts, and the clips are clipped onto the actual terminal. So that's how that's set up. Anyway, we'll run this, see what we sort of get, and should take about, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours or so. All right, so there we go. And starting voltage was right under 3.6 volts. So yeah, we'll post the results for this, and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, looks like we just finished. It is a bit late, and according to the tester, which a lot of people like to look at the amp hours, 156.4. The label said 157.7. But now let's look at the watt hours. The watt hours are 504.86, and if you look at our energy, we have 504.58. So almost a exact measurement, 504.48, and as the capacity said, 504.8. So the watt hour again is going to be your closest measurement. We'll have the full list of the full test report available, and that's where you can see the full test curve. But yeah, again, pretty solid. Very, cell tests well, nice form factor, holds voltage well, and look forward to releasing this as a version 5 kit with 8 cells already installed, and also future pre-built battery, 24 volt pre-built battery. All right, so now let's look at the physical dimensions of the REPT 150 cell. And this cell is particularly appealing to us because it fits our enclosure incredibly well. So in comparison, I have 2 REPT 150 cells, and next to them I have an REPT 280 cell. And if you look visually above, they actually don't look that much different. Now, the 280 is slightly smaller than 2 150s. So let's get some digital calipers and see what the difference actually is, and to give us some sort of an idea. Alright, so we have approximately 71 millimeters on the 280. And about 73 millimeters on the 2 150s. Now, you'll probably say, well, in production, you're going to have to put a separator in there, so that's going to get larger. And that is true. And just to kind of give you an idea, we'll be using some of these really thin fiberglass separator sheets that are going to have a minimal impact, but still provide the insulation layer that many people love. So you can see that sits there. So that should enable some different options. Now let us give you an idea of where we're going with this, and we'll give you sort of a preview of the V5 and the upcoming 24 volt battery that we're going to be releasing soon. All right, this is the upcoming 24 volt version 5 kit. It's still probably about a month away. In all honesty, we're still going to have the same I/O switch, just like the 12 volt. So we're getting those sort of things sort of ironed out. It'll support the larger 24 volt or 8S active balancer with pigtail support. So it'll support remote on enable disable functionality just like the smaller one. But if we look at the actual cells, you can see we have wired our heating pads sort of in a series type setup, and what that allows us to do is the same heating pads we use on 12 volts can now be used in a 24 volt setup. But as you can see, we are able to properly fit all 8. They fit the cake just fine, and they have those thin separator sheets that I had showed you earlier. So you've got 7 separator sheets in here, and gives you nice snug fit, but in our same enclosure. So this allows us to maximize space, gives us almost the same amount of total watt hours as our 12 volt battery, and still keeps the weight under 60 pounds, which is very important for us.
Alright, well, thank you for watching our review of the REPT 150 cell. We hope that sort of our research and a little bit of testing we've done gives you a better idea of what you can't do with this cell. As far as us, we're going to be offering this as a V5 kit with cells pre-installed, as well as a pre-built 24 volt battery. We may offer loose cells, but if we do, they're probably only going to be available as a crate. That is something that we will be looking into. If you're interested, just reach out to us. We'll see what we can do. But other than that, thanks again for choosing Sun Fun Kits. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.